Good morning and welcome to our UUFSD service via Zoom. I'm Diane Masser-Fry and I will be serving as your worship associate this morning, along with Enrique Morones as our speaker. We invite you to consider turning on your video function on occasion because it's lovely to see everyone's faces. All of you of all ages who we miss seeing in person. If you have your own chalice or candle at home, have it handy so we can all light our chalices together at the appropriate time. We begin our worship as a community of all ages, joined in singing together our gathering hymn. This Land is Your Land by Woody Guthrie, sung and played today by Morgan Scott. Words will appear on your screens.
California to New York Island, from the redwood forests to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. I've roamed and rambled. I've followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts. All around me, her voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. When the sun comes shining, as I was strolling, and the wheat fields waving, and the dust clouds rolling, and the fog was lifting, her voice came chanting. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking, I saw a sign there, and that sign said, not just passing, but on the other side, it didn't say nothing. That sign was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me.
Thank you, Morgan. If you are visiting today, we are so glad that you are here and hope that you enjoy your time with us this morning. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Diego is a community drawn together by 7 Unitarian Universalist principles. These are principles of our UU faith that we covenant together to affirm and live into being in our lives and in the world. There are 7 UU principles, all important, but for the next hour, keep in mind the second principle: justice, equity, and compassion for all human relations. At this challenging time, we come together to reaffirm our commitment to each other as one community and one world, recognizing that we are all in this life together no matter what. Welcome. We are glad you are here. We are an active congregation, and there are many ways to keep informed: the newsletter, our website, and the weekly order of service announcements, and our quarterly magazine dialogue. If you are a visitor, we encourage you to sign up for our weekly online newsletter and emails by sending an email to office@uufsd.org and give our administrator, Tracy, your contact information. Although we are not together physically, our pastoral care committee is still here for you. If you are in need of pastoral care, please email pastoralcare@uufsd.org and provide your contact info, and if you're comfortable, state what your needs are and which will help them to respond to you. Again, that's pastoralcare@uufsd.org. Reverend Joe and Allison hosted a drive-up hour on Saturday in which people were welcome to come and bring water as part of our annual water communion into a collective vessel. If you would still like to participate in our ritual, which will be shared on the 13th, please take a horizontal photo of you or your family pouring water. Then email that picture to Joe Cantrell, our audio visual guru, or if you send it to Tracy at office.uufsd.org, she can forward it to Joe for you. Now, one way we affirm our congregation is through rituals like chalice lighting. The UU flaming chalice represents our shared history, hope, and commitment to our principles or values of our faith that join us together. I invite everyone who wishes to join in lighting a chalice or a candle as a symbol of oneness to all people, as I read these words by Florence Caplow. So go ahead and turn on your videos, hold up your chalice to your camera so that all can see as we share our light together. In recognition of Labor Day, we light this flame to honor all work, including the work of our hands and back, in gratitude for all the labors that support our world, and for all those who boldly continue the work of justice, equity, and peace. Please open your heart, calm your mind, and join us in singing our centering hymn, Spirit of Life, followed by reciting our covenant. The words for both will appear on your screen. May love be the spirit of this congregation. May the quest for truth be its sacrament and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our covenant. And sometimes we need a little extra comfort me, and so we just throw it in at the beginning of songs. But now we're also going to talk about our individual needs, as each week we remind ourselves that we are more than a congregation of ideas, but also a community of people, leading individual lives, experiencing joys and sorrows. We pledge to one another our care and support. If you wish to share a joy or a sorrow, please go ahead and type it in the chat box, which is now on. Thank you for sharing those. Let us remember that there are always many joys and sorrows that go unspoken, but shape our togetherness. For all those joys and sorrows, spoken and unspoken, let us seek comfort for ourselves and offer comfort to all who seek it by joining in song. Comfort me.
Good morning. Each person's family started out as a day laborer. Some families have to look farther back in their familial history, lineage than others, but all of our roots come from the soil. In present day, there is a stigma associated with being a day laborer, and many injustices are committed to those who allow us to have food on our tables. Please enjoy this book, Side by Side, Lado a Lado, the story of Dolores Huerta y Cesar Chavez.
Side by side, lado a lado. In New Mexico, there lived a little named Dolores, who talked so fast that her grandfather once said, "Dolores, you must have 7 tongues." Many miles away in Arizona, there lived a little boy named Cesar, who was a very good listener. Cesar listened to his mother cry when his family lost his home, and they needed to become migrant farm workers. When Dolores was a girl, she moved to California with her mother and brothers. She joined the Girl Scouts and worked to raise money for the soldiers fighting in World War II. Caesar's family moved to California to follow the crops and work in the fields. Although he had to drop out of school to work, Caesar always had a book under his arm. From her mother, Dolores learned to think of others. When poor farm workers' families had no places to sleep, Dolores' mother would let them stay at her hotel for free. Life for Caesar's family was difficult. All day they bent over in the hot sun picking lettuce, strawberries, and grapes. There was never enough water to drink out in the field. Dolores grew up and became a teacher. She saw the farm worker children come to school cold and barefoot, too hungry to learn as well as they could. As Cesar grew up, he and his friends were hurt by dangerous tools and had mean bosses who sprayed the plants with poisons that made the farm workers sick. Then something special happened. Dolores and Cesar met. Dolores saw that Cesar had great faith. His dreams would bring hope to thousands of farm workers. Cesar saw that Dolores had great courage. She would stand up and fight for what was right. Side by side, Dolores and Cesar began their journey. Dolores and Cesar drove from town to town, standing on the back of flatbed trucks and inviting farm workers to join La Causa. The cause for justice together, they demand better living and working conditions for the farm workers. Cesar and Dolores asked people to stop buying grapes from California because the poisons the growers used there were making the workers sick. People listened and the grapes rotted on the vines. The farm workers won. They got a safer place to work and the grapes became safer for people to eat. Cesar led men, women, and children on a 340-mile march to demand that workers get paid enough to live on. They arrived in Sacramento, California on April 10th, Dolores' birthday. Dolores gave an amazing speech and the people were heard. The growers signed a contract with the workers, giving them better pay for their hard work. It was time for the farm workers to share in the harvest. Though they each had a large family, little food, and no money, when Dolores and Cesar sat down at Cesar's kitchen table, they always looked for ways to make the world a better place. If we don't help the farm workers, Cesar asked Dolores, who will? When the growers and the politicians wouldn't listen, Cesar stopped eating for 36 days so that others would understand how important it was to protect the workers. When their bosses bullied them, the workers used to say, "We can't do it, we can't win." But with the help of Dolores, they began to chant, "Si se puede, yes we can." For 30 years, Dolores and Cesar worked and listened and talked and marched side by side. Dolores and Cesar worked to help families stay together. They fought to pass the Immigration Act of 1986 that helped more than 1 million immigrants become United States citizens. Dolores and Cesar had many victories because they knew that together all things were possible. In 1993, Cesar passed away, and Dolores and the farm workers marched to honor him. Dolores still works and marches for justice for the poor, and she is not alone. The spirit of Cesar Charlesman is still with her, by her side.
Each Sunday, we collect a financial offering to help those in need and to sustain the work of our fellowship. We are here to tend to those needs of those in our congregation to help those in the broader community. If you are in need, please contact the pastoral care team. If you wish to make a one-time contribution to UUFSD or to pay your pledge, please go to the UUFSD website and click on the Give Online button. Or you may text to give, or use the UUFSD PayPal account shown here. Or you may send in a paper check to our office. All of these methods are described in the slide. When we are able to meet in person, each week, members of our congregation bring food and other goods to be distributed by the Community Resource Center in Encinitas. If you are in need of food, the CRC is here for you. If you are fortunate enough to be able to help, please take food offerings directly to the CRC and leave them on the table in the alley behind the 2nd Street Food Bank, or make a financial donation through their website. Our spoken meditation today is by Tanya Marquez, minister at First Church in San Diego. And it is called Call from the Past, Present, and Future. Call from the past. From the heights of the Andes, the jungle and the desert, from the depth of the sea, from a time that was, from a time that stretches beyond our memory, we are called. Our histories stretch back to the first people, the first steps, the collision of worlds to abrupt beginnings, all wanderers of this land. We have inherited the unfinished labor of our ancestors, of those that came before us. We are called to continue the work. Call from the present. The voices of our people call us now. The world harbors their joys and their sorrows. We hear the cries of our people demanding justice. In that call, we recognize the voices of those who wander in the desert, the border crossers, the navigators, the justice seekers, the dreamers, and the hopeful. We weave our story to the story of our ancestors right here, right now. We are in the midst of responding to the call that comes from the corners of this land, from the south, from the north, from the east, and from the west. We are called to sustain the work. Call from the future. The voices of those who will be call us. A reminder of who we need to be. In the weaving of our story to the web of life, we must remember that we must not cut the strings, for there are others coming after us, others with tender hearts and strong wills, with creative determination, those who will live in the house of tomorrow. Their vision escapes us, yet we are called to prepare the road, to leave behind the possibility and foundations upon which they will build a better tomorrow. We are called to create new opportunities. Let us enter in a time of silence for meditation, reflection, or prayer by first singing the chant, Meditation on Breathing. The time of silence will end with the sound of the bell.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
Our speaker today is Enrique Morones, who we've had the pleasure to have in our pulpit before. Enrique is a lifelong human rights activist and founder of Border Angels, now retired. He is the founder of the House of Mexico, soon to open in Balboa Park, and started Gente Unida, working with the migrant community, day laborers, refugee children, and asylum seekers, lecturing around the world and currently working on a big campaign to get out the vote. Enrique has a weekly podcast called Buen Hombre, and this week he interviewed Linda Ronstadt. Welcome, Enrique.
Thank you all very much, and I'm delighted to be with you once again, Diane and everybody. I'll never forget one of the times when I was with you and somebody said that I'm a UU and I didn't even know it, and I take that as a compliment. I'm very fond of the Unitarian Universalist and your history of always standing on the side of love. So today I want to talk about Labor Day and the labor movement and the fact that it's a Labor Day like never before. We are facing two distinct viruses that have affected the way all of us live around the world. Of course, I'm talking about COVID and I'm talking about racism. It's a sad state of affairs, but we shall overcome. As the founder of Border Angels, I started my work in the fields working with the day laborers. Some of you have heard the story that back in 1986, I went to the canyons in North County, San Diego, where people were and are still living that actually work in the strawberry fields. These are laborers. And I went there to make sure they were okay, to bring them food, to share, to share with them. And it's something that still continues today. I will never forget when I was at the White House with President Obama, and I had the opportunity to be with him a few times. I told him about our work and talked about the day laborers, and he said something that I'll never forget. And it was kind of mentioned at the beginning of this service. What he said was, before we were us, we were them. And he's absolutely correct. Before we were us, as a people, we were them. In our family histories, all of us have been day laborers, some more recent than others. And all of us have worked in the fields. Once again, some more recent than others. I've now retired from Border Angels. I retired about a year ago, and I'm really focused on Gente Unida, and we have three principles. One is working with the migrant children. We had a group go there yesterday to Tijuana to bring donations, to bring mass, to bring joy, to spend some time with them, because the society is judged on how we treat our children. Another one is education. I go around and lecture, now by Zoom, and soon I'll be able to do it again in person once the virus situation gets a lot better. My last lecture was, I was in Berlin talking about the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall and how we should be building bridges and not walls. And shortly after that, I went to Mount St. Mary's College, an all-women's college, and lectured, and then the virus came. So we need to continue to move forward. So we have the migrant children and the migrants, we have education, and the third focus that we have is voting, because we face the most important election we will ever have in our lives this November 3rd. And we are very active in this campaign, and we will continue to be very active in everything that we do, and I know that you're active as well. As far as the labor movement is concerned, it became a federal holiday, Labor Day, way back in 1896. And this was at the height of the Industrial Revolution, when we had people working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, children 5 and 6 year old working in horrific conditions, very unsafe and unsanitary conditions. This was especially true for the poor and for the migrant community. This is especially true today for the poor and the migrant community. So we have a long ways to go. And one of the things that we were able to do as a people, as a community, to overcome some of these inequities was to organize, was to strike, was to rally, was to march. whether it was the Haymaker riot or the Pullman strike or the Bread and Roses strike of 1912. The similar actions were to organize, to strike, to protest peacefully, and to demand change. When they asked, why is there a strike? Why are you walking off the work lines and not working anymore? The response was from the Bread and Riot strike of 1912, because we don't receive enough pay. Because we don't receive enough pay. The strike spread, and soon there were strikes all over the country. I want to read something that one of the factory inspectors and women's representations stated during this strike. Her name is Helen Todd. And in 1910, she stated, "Not at once, but woman is the mothering element in the world, and her vote will go forward toward helping the time when life's bread, which is home, shelter, and security, and the roses of life, music, education, nature, and books, shall be the heritage of every child that is born in the country, in the government of which she has a voice." This is something very significant, because this is something that we all aspire to. We still have a long ways to go. And I have a history, a personal history in the labor movement. My grandfather, Luis N. Morones, was the founder of the first labor union in Mexico, the first major labor union in Mexico. And when he founded the CROM, which was the labor union that was established about 90 years ago, it was a labor union because of the same situation that a lot of labor unions are formed, because he knew what it was like to be a child working. He knew about the unsanitary conditions. He knew about the lack of fair wages and the mistreatment of the workers. So he formed first an electricians union, and then he formed the CROM. And the CROM, which is a federation of Mexican workers, became the most powerful labor union in Mexico. And that organization, that labor union, was going to team up with the two other very powerful labor unions in the United States at the time, which was the AFL and the CIO. Both of those were separate unions. And the idea was to form one massive union for North America: the CROM, the AFL, and the CIO. And then life happened. My grandfather and the president of Mexico, President Calles at the time, they ended up coming to the United States. My grandfather would often meet with the leaders of the AFL and the CIO to talk about the labor unions and the merger. And something that I'll never forget that I used to hear from my father was that on one of those visits to the United States, they had a chauffeur for him. He'd go out and have lunch and dinner and things like that. And he went to a restaurant, and his chauffeur had driven him, and he said, come on in and have lunch with me. And the person hesitated. But when they went into the restaurant, the manager said, "I'm sorry, this person, who happened to be Black, needs to eat in another part of the restaurant." And my grandfather said, "Absolutely not. Either he sits at the table with me, or I will make sure that not only I, but people that I'm dealing with in Washington, D.C. never come to this restaurant again." He was able to share a meal with his chauffeur. So this was Black Lives Matter in action, and this was in the 1920s. So it was a long time ago, and it's something that my father also participated in. Because when my grandfather and the president of Mexico were in San Diego, my grandfather sent my dad, also named Luis Morones, like my grandfather, to go to school in Long Island, New York. And while he was in school there, him and my uncle Enrique went to go get a haircut in this little town called Farmingdale, Long Island. And when they went into the barber shop, it was a similar situation. The barber said, "I can cut your hair and your brother's hair, but not the young man's hair that's with you," who happened to be a man from Haiti. And my dad said, "Either all three of us get our haircut in here, or I will tell the school in Farmingdale that nobody is to come to this barbershop. The only barbershop in town unless you allow him to also get a haircut. And he was able to get a haircut. So once again, Black Lives Matter, something that I firmly believe in. I was very encouraged to see the signage at the beginning of your ceremony. With the Black Lives Matter movement, this is something that I truly, truly believe in. Just yesterday, as every day, we have a walk, run for Brianna Taylor. And yesterday we gathered all 11 chapters of the Brianna Taylor walk, run, and we ran and walked down Broadway here in San Diego. I encourage you to join us. We do it every day. We meet at 8th and B at 8 o'clock in the morning, because it's very important that we practice what we preach, like the Unitarians have done as freedom riders, of standing on the side of love, of joining us when we do our activities at that horrible wall which separates the United States and Mexico. When we're talking about Labor Day, let's remember to thank a day labor, remember that we were there. Remember that they are essential workers. Essential workers are getting a lot of attention nowadays. And thank God for the healthcare workers. We work very closely with them, with Gente Unida. Just yesterday, like every Saturday, we, Gente Unida, join Doctors for Camp Closure, and we do a protest in front of the county administration building, seeking to support the asylum seekers, saying that we do not want children in cages, that we need to treat people with dignity and love, something that sadly is not happening today. So we continue with our efforts with Gente Unida. We encourage you to join us. And one of my dear friends, Dolores Huerta, continues to be very active in her efforts to promote the spirit of United Farm Workers. And I love the lado a lado, or side by side reading by the children, talking about Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez. They are both role models for me and for many of you. I have followed a lot of the principles that they believe in, and they believe in the principles of Mahatma Gandhi, about fasting, about nonviolence, about organizing. Somebody else that followed those principles was Martin Luther King. They both followed Gandhi, and both of them started their activism by registering people to vote. And that's something that we're very focused on, because as I mentioned, we are facing the most important election of our lifetimes. And one of the things that Cesar Chavez used to say, and he learned this from Mahatma Gandhi, is there is no such thing as defeat in nonviolence. So we need to continue and act in nonviolence, as we have in the Black Lives Matter protests, marches. We know that there's other people that interfere sometimes, but in the spirit of John Lewis, another hero of mine and many of you, we want to practice good trouble. We cannot be silent. We need to be active. We need to be recognizing the work of the day laborers every single day. One of the things that Cesar Chavez did with United Farm Workers, he started a radio show. I've had several radio shows. Now I have a podcast, as was mentioned, Buen Hombre, Magnificent Mujer. So this Tuesday, make sure you tune in and listen to somebody that causes good trouble all the time. Although she has Parkinson's, she cannot sing anymore. Linda Ronstadt, somebody that you all know. And it was humorous the other day when I announced that she was going to be my guest when I was talking to the young runners and walkers that we gather every morning to support Brianna Taylor until there's justice. And everybody looked at me and said, "Who's Linda Ronstadt?" Because they're all young. They're all young. So I explained who she was. And it's important to know our history. So it's important to know our history of the labor movement. I started my work working with day laborers. And I remember when I was in school at the University of San Diego, somebody came and gave a talk that greatly influenced me. And that somebody wasn't just anybody. It was Mahatma Gandhi's grandson. And he shared the story of a man walking along the beach with his son. And his son was throwing these starfish into the ocean. And the father said, "Son, what are you doing?" And he says, "Dad, it's so hot out here and the tide has gone in." And he says, "Yeah, I can see that, but why are you throwing the starfish into the ocean?" And he says, "These starfish are dying. It's so hot out here." And the father says, "Son, there's thousands of starfish. What you do doesn't make a difference." And the little boy picked up a starfish and said, "It'll make a difference to this one." That is the power of one. 2 weeks after I heard that story, and I know you've heard it before, some of you, I'm out in the desert putting water, and we see this gentleman stumbling along, and we run out to help him, to give him water. And he's carrying somebody that's almost dead. And we help him. And thank God they survived. And I remember the gentleman said to me, I want to help you out. How can I pay you back? And I go, just help somebody someday. Just help somebody someday. The power of one. That is what is so important, the power of one. We know that we can make a big difference for good, as we've seen in people like John Lewis. And unfortunately, we have also seen that one person can make a bad influence for bad. And that is why, as people are watching us, as our children are watching us, we got to be sure that we go out there and vote. There's a woman that has greatly inspired me, besides Dolores Huerta and some of the people I've mentioned. My greatest hero is my father, who is he passed away 7 years ago. He would have been 100 years old this year if he was still alive. But the woman I'm referring to passed away a couple of years ago, and she was killed by somebody that somebody called some good people. Those some good people were white supremacists that killed Heather Heyer in Virginia. And Heather Heyer, before she died, said, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. We need to be outraged, and we need to act in love. We need to make sure that we continue to protest, that we continue to march, that we continue to organize, we continue to strike, because that's how change happens. Frederick Douglass taught us that change is not easy, but we've got to act. We cannot be silent. We need to speak out. I have been involved in caravans for most of my life. In 2006, I led a caravan from Friendship Park all the way to the White House and back. We had 111 vehicles. We went to 40 cities. We went to 20 states. And we said, let's rise up and protest. And protest we did that spring with the biggest marches in the history of the United States in the spring of 2006. Well, the biggest protest ever and the biggest caravan ever will be that caravan and that protest that we all participate in on November 3rd. So please remember that spirit. Please remember to continue to stand on the side of love, to say no to children in cages, to say yes to freeing the asylum seekers. Join us every Saturday at 12 noon. We meet in front of the county administration building. Say yes to Black Lives Matter. Every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, we meet at 8th and B in downtown San Diego. Yesterday, you saw that people were protesting the Kentucky Derby. Well, we've been protesting the major league sports, baseball, basketball, football. And every other week, we meet in front of Petco Park and we say no justice, no games. Because we need to make sure that the whole world knows that we are paying attention, that we are outraged. The day laborers, thank them, appreciate them, show them your kindness, show them your love. Thank a day laborer. They're essential workers. They're still looking for health care. They're still looking for fair wages. They're still looking to be recognized. Not only the healthcare workers, which are incredible people, but the farm workers. The farm workers, they're not getting the masks. They're not getting social distancing, and they're out there every day. Even children. Children are out there working in the fields, and that's not something that we should allow. We need to make sure that we promote democracy, that we promote truth. And when yesterday, one of the songs I requested for this service was played, the she that's being referred to in my mind is that, is democracy, is truth, is love. This land is your land. This land is the land of all of us. Let's remember, this is Kumeyaay land. We're on borrowed land, and we should be respectful of that land. Just imagine if we could have what we had a few years back when we celebrated the election of Barack Obama. Just imagine how you felt. Just imagine how the world looked so much brighter then. We will have that brightness again. We will dance again. We will sing again. We will hug again. But it's all dependent on the fact that we all vote, that we get out there, that we promote what we believe in, and we ask you for your support. So Gente Unida, we're a nonprofit. I know the information has been put up there or will be put up there later, how you can reach us, how you could buy a t-shirt or donate, buy a book. Most importantly, how you can participate with us. Because love is an action, not just a word. So please join me on November 3rd when we go out there and vote. Every vote makes a big difference. And we got to tell our friends to vote. And those that cannot vote, they're not 18, they don't have papers, they know people that can vote. So let's make sure that we make that the loudest voice ever in our lives by demonstrating that we will vote, that we demand justice for Brianna Taylor, for George Floyd, for Miss Guillen, for all of the people that are suffering the consequences of that virus called hate. Love is the answer. Love will overcome hate, and love is something that I know the UUs have always practiced and will continue to practice. So I send you my love. Thank you very much for all of your wonderful work, the leadership that you have demonstrated, the Freedom Riders. John Lewis told us and taught us to practice good trouble. The children that read Lado a Lado, that example of Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta lives on. When I was in closing, I'll never forget when Elena Chavez passed away. That's Cesar's wife. And I got a call saying, somebody here wants to see you. He's a worker and he needs help. So I said, tell him I'll be back tomorrow. I'm in Bakersfield today at Elena Chavez's funeral. So when I came back, that worker was standing there waiting for me. He caught my attention immediately. He didn't have either arm. He didn't have one leg. His name is Jose Luis Hernandez Cruz. He's from Honduras. He was a victim of La Bestia, the cargo trains that go through Mexico. He fell off on the last train and 3 of his limbs were crushed. And he came to tell me that he wants to continue to work to promote love. I could not believe it. I could not believe that somebody that had been through this was thinking of how he could share his love even more. And that's the type of spirit of what humanity is all about. That's the type of spirit about who we all are. We're all the same race, the human race. Let's embrace each other right now, virtually, but eventually we will hug again. But we've got to continue to love each other. Support your day laborer. Make sure you thank him or her as you see them out. Even today, they're still standing in front of those stores. They're still standing in front of those community centers. They're the ones that need the food, and they're the ones that need the support. So thank you all very much. I always enjoy speaking with you, and I'm looking forward to the chats after the service. So as you say, and I firmly believe, we need to all stand on the side of love. Muchas gracias, and vote November 3rd.
Thank you, Enrique. And we're going to put up a slide of Enrique's contact information and information about Gente Unida, his organization, so that if you are interested in getting involved or contacting him, this is the information about how to do that. There we go. So www.genteunida.net, and the phone number is also up on your screen. Or Enrique at genteunida.net. Thank you, Enrique, for that.
Gracias.
As we move to the close of this worship service, let us invoke the spirit, the insights, and ideals of this morning service by singing the closing song, Imagine by John Lennon, performed today by fellowship members Doug and Morgan Scott.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. justicia y hambre. Una fraternidad de amor. Imagina la gente ahí compartiendo el mundo. You may say I'm a dreamer, pero sola no estoy. I hope someday you'll join us. Y el mundo esté en paz. And the world will be as one.
Muchísimas gracias, Morgan and Doug Scott, for that beautiful rendition. Our closing words were taken from a sermon by Presbyterian minister Derek McQueen. On this day, when we rest from our labor, may we honor our ancestors and all who have gone before. May we take the time to stop and just for a little while see ourselves in the awesome sacred arc of time and know that we are part of something grand. May we see the greatness in each other and finally remember to say to someone, thank you for the work that you do. I trust that you are doing your best to make the world a better place. And on this day, I celebrate you. May it be so. After we extinguish our chalice flames and recite the words, we invite you to listen to our postlude, after which the chat function will be turned back on while Joe is organizing the break rooms for you to join in a virtual coffee hour and connection. Enrique is going to be staying, and so depending on which chat room you land in and he lands in, you may get a chance to talk with him today. Please join with me now in extinguishing our chalices and recite the words shown on your screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.